De Palma, the master of the macabre, invites you to a showing of the latest fashion in murder. Dressed to Kill. Michael Caine. Angie Dickinson. Nancy Allen. Dressed to Kill. Murder. Made to Order by Brian De Palma. Coming to a theater near you July 25th.
Hey, welcome back to Dave's Movie Diary. I really love those old trailers for lots of reasons. The nostalgia, of course, but I love the fact that you just get a tease. They don't tell you too much, but just enough to get you in. Not like now where you can probably just watch the trailer and know what happens in the whole film. So anyway, that's my rant. Dressed to Kill 1980, directed by Brian De Palma. One of the most controversial thrillers of its era for lots of reasons. It's very stylish, it's very provocative, erotic, and violent, but above all, cinematic. That's what Brian De Palma does. Some films ask you to watch. Dressed to Kill kind of dares you to, and that's always a thrilling element. What's the film about? Kate Miller, played by Angie Dickinson. She's an unhappy New York housewife. She's a bit neurotic. She's dealing with that. She's searching for some excitement and connection. She's in a loveless marriage. She's seeing Michael Caine, who's a psychiatrist, and her everyday life is quite empty and vacuous. She's trying to fill it in and make things happen. And there's a chance encounter at a museum with a mystery man that leads to an affair. And then there's a scene of violence, which then makes the story shift to Liz Blake. She's a call girl who witnesses the shocking scene of violence and has to deal with the aftermath in concert with a young man and the psychiatrist, played by Michael Caine, like I mentioned. There's also a mysterious blonde woman who's hanging around and seems slightly dangerous, might be the reason why mysterious things are happening. Then there's a murder investigation involving Dennis Franz, of course, as a cop. He's in his element there. So what we're treated to is partly a psychological thriller. There's a murder mystery. It's an erotic fantasy. Hey, come on, it's Brian De Palma. He's going to get some eroticism and stalkiness and weirdness in there, and he's going to do it stylishly. This film also really rammed home the Hitchcock homage that De Palma, I think, knowingly plays on. So lots of things happening here. It's all cinematic, not much realism, but that's what you want from a thriller. I've got a really interesting history with this one. It's probably unique. I became aware of this film by reading Mad Magazine. People my age, and I'm in my 50s, might remember this. I don't know if it's still around anymore, but it used to do film parodies. So it had Mort Drucker, I think, was the artist, and he'd draw these amazing caricatures of the actors and the storyline, and they just tweak it a bit to make it slightly ridiculous and really funny. So I read that, and I was really intrigued by it because it had all those elements I mentioned above. You know, people getting murdered and a slasher and a mystery and a call girl and all these bizarre things happening. Just didn't know what it was really about. It looked dangerous. That was enough for me as probably 12 or 13. I tracked it. It's one of these mini films that I hunted down as soon as I could on VHS in the late 80s. I felt like it was a movie I shouldn't be watching, which is always a great thing to do as a 16-year-old or however old I was. And what stood out to me then, obviously, was the nudity. We get it right from the get-go with Angie Dickinson in the shower. It's not really her, but we think it's her. The shocking violence scenes in the elevator. The whodunit mystery, the Hitchcockian I had seen Psycho by that point, so I could see the parallels with the way that it's framed, the music. What stands out to me now, and I usually find this, is the direction, the style, the craftsmanship, the confidence in making this film. It's a balls on the line kind of effort by Brian De Palma. And the museum sequence alone is worth studying. I love it. It's just so weird. There's hardly any dialogue, and it's really artistic and so different to what you get now. These long tracking shots. It's the work of an auteur, which De Palma really is. On to De Palma, the great stylist. I love him. He's controversial, doesn't always work, hasn't made a good film for a long time. But I still think he's one of the most visually gifted directors of his generation. He came up with Scorsese. They had a neck and neck battle in a kind of good-natured way throughout the 70s, early 80s, and then Scorsese left De Palma behind, became much more critically and financially successful. De Palma always stuck to his guns, made the films he wanted to make, for the most part. Mission Impossible in 96, and probably The Untouchables are two studio films that he made where he, for the most part, stayed in his lanes. But when he did what he wanted to do, like this film, the results are extraordinary. So by this time, like the trailer said, he'd already made Carrie and The Fury. He'd made some really experimental movies at the end of the 60s, early 70s with Robert De Niro, of all people, called Greetings and Hi Mum. I haven't seen those, but I should. After this, he just has a great run. There's this, Blowout with Travolta in 81, Scarface in 83, Body Double in 84. That's a bizarre film. You either love that or hate it. Untouchables, Carlito's Way, that is a banger in 93 with Pacino, and then on to Mission Impossible and Snake Eyes with Nick Cage. Lots of really cinematic films. They're entertaining, they're edgy, they're showing things we shouldn't see, they're very stalky, they're not PC. So they're a moment in time, very voyeuristic, and that's this movie is so voyeuristic. It's really a guilty pleasure. He does a lot of the things that he's known for in this, using the split screens, montages, really elaborate camera moves, different angles. He's showing off a lot in this and building up a lot of erotic tension. And especially for the time, must have been really, really shocking. I can see why this film has the reputation it does. Hitchcock looms large over this. I've already mentioned that. There's an obvious comparison in many ways to Psycho. Without spoiling it, there's a lot of psychological mastery, sexual repression evident here in multiple characters. Voyeurism, I've already talked about. Shocking violence out of nowhere. Psycho started that. De Palma gets blamed for copying Hitchcock's style a lot. I don't agree. I just think he's updating and modernizing him. We all copy. It's the same in music and literature everywhere. It's impossible. Our DNA builds over time. We take in what's worked and what hasn't. It's the same with making films. I just think he's updating it. He's using Hitchcockian themes and ideas, imbuing them with 70s sexuality and 80s visual style and music, etc. Exploiting it, yes, but feels less of a remake of Hitchcock than a conversion and modernizing. Angie Dickinson, interesting choice for this because she was well known for TV work. She was a beloved character, and she shows up here nude in the shower and creating scenes with men in art galleries and talking about her sexual feelings, and totally off the wall performance, but really good. She's great in the role. She really gets that sense of loneliness and frustration and vulnerability, but above all, curiosity across. And if the film works, it only works because we understand her dissatisfaction with her modern life. She seemingly has everything, a nuclear family, but she's so unhappy. And what happens to her is is a point for discussion once you've seen the film. Nancy Allen, she's the secret weapon of the film. She becomes the audience surrogate in many ways. We can identify with her. She's very earthy and funny and grounded and really practical. And she's like this in a lot of films. And she kind of reprises this role in Blowout a year later. Interestingly enough, she was married to Brian De Palma for a while. And she gives all of his films that she's in a lot of humanity. And I think without her, maybe the film loses its anchor and becomes all style. So she's critical. On to Michael Caine. Really interesting performance from him. Everything's really controlled and restrained and measured. Not what you generally get from Michael Caine. His Cockney accent isn't there. He never overplays anything. The tension comes from what he isn't showing. And an odd choice, I think, for this film, but he works. He's good enough to make it work. And I think he understands that the withholding can be more powerful than revealing everything. So I think it's one of Michael Caine's performances that's kind of forgotten about, but worth checking out because it's so different. The museum sequence I've already talked about. It's definitely the masterpiece. Happens really early in the film. It's totally visual. I love the camera movement, the eye contact between Angie Dickinson and the other characters. It's really uncomfortable. It's really odd, and the stillness. It's like I think it's using the technique that the best interrogators use, which is not saying anything and waiting for the other person to fold. That's how that scene felt to me. Pure cinema. Probably a sequence that could work almost anywhere in the world because it doesn't rely on dialogue. Any human being can relate to this scene. The elevator murder. It's one of the great shocking scenes of 1980s cinema. It's effective because it's so unexpected. It's brutal. It's shot from different aspects. And you can see that the character is so overwhelmed. And it's shocking because the build-up to it is so unexpected. We don't know what's going to happen. Love it. Visual style, that's what De Palma's always about. He makes sure it's in every scene of his movies, the tracking shots, the split screens, the framing from a voyeur's angle, lots of mirrors and reflections and glimpses of things, all done for the stylistic element, not necessarily for the narrative or the plot. So I think that even people who don't like this film would have to admit that it looks incredible. The score, strong Bernard Herrmann influence, one of Hitchcock's guys. What it adds is the tension and the melancholy, definitely the dread. The music constantly pushes the audience and ratchets up the scenes. So, look, what worked for me, De Palma's direction, so confident. I can't imagine how he pitched this to the studio. I guess he'd done quite well with those earlier films, especially Carrie. So he had some juice at the time. He just gambles it all on this film, and it worked. Kudos to him. The museum sequence, masterclass. Nancy Allen, engaging. Michael Caine, subtle and intelligent. Seductive atmosphere. Very unsettling film. Among the best of its era, I think, for visual storytelling. As always, Brian De Palma. What doesn't work? Gender politics. From a modern perspective anyway, how it treats transgender identity is very controversial, understandably troubling for many viewers of this age, and needs to be taken into account. The plot logic at times requires considerable suspension of disbelief, but with De Palma films around this era, the plot isn't the most important thing. It's how you feel, and I'm always on board with that. So if realism's important to you, this will frustrate you, but it's a thriller. It's an early 80s thriller. So just embrace it as heightened psychological pulp. I think it'll work much better for you. So an interesting thing to think about, De Palma versus Hitchcock. Who's the better pure visual storyteller? Where do I come out? I think Hitchcock is a far greater filmmaker. I've seen a few of his films lately. They are still masterpieces. They still hold up. I wonder if De Palma might be considered a more flamboyant visual stylist. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think he's more provocative. He's probably ultimately more interesting for widows like me who like to be confronted with things I don't see in my everyday life. I don't think anyone makes movies that feel this cinematic and incredible just to watch. So look, my final thoughts. It's an extremely provocative, messy, uncomfortable film, but it's very stylish and it's unforgettable. You'll never forget watching it. That's for sure. So it's made by a guy taking some genuine risks with his career, and it paid off. Not all of the risks worked, but overall, it's a piece of art that still endures to this day. So if you're game, see it. Usually it's on Prime Amazon. So I'd be keen to see what you think. All right, as always, thanks for joining me. Catch you next time.